The state capitals project in our Python class presents the user with the name of a state and a prompt to enter the capital of that state. All 50 states and capitals are in our game, and we'll randomly pull a state and the capital and quiz the student. And I've also set this up so it doesn't do any duplicates. So it goes through all 50 states, but in random order before it repeats a state. So our first question here is, what's the capital of New Jersey? Notice I can enter quit to stop, but I'm going to put in Trenton here as the capital of New Jersey. And it comes back and says that is correct. Trenton is the capital of New Jersey. And it keeps score. So I've gotten 1 of 1 correct. What's the capital of Ohio? So I can type in Columbus, and I get that correct. And then Vermont, let's say it's Montpelier, which is the capital of Vermont, and I did spell it correct. If I misspelled it, it would have marked it wrong. What's the capital of Iowa? Now the correct answer here is Des Moines. Let's say we put in Ames. And we're told, sorry, the capital of Iowa is Des Moines. And so now my score is 3 of 4. And I can continue on, but eventually if I get tired, I can type in quit, and our game ends. So that's what we're going to create in this project. We're going to be using a list, a dictionary. We're going to work on functions and returning values from functions. And we'll use the random object in randomly generating the list of states and capitals. And I want to show you how I use Excel in writing some code where I have data that can be represented really well in an Excel spreadsheet, but I want to get that data into something like a list or a tuple or a dictionary for my Python program. So with that, let's jump into Python. So just a little bit of instruction before we get into writing our code. I just want to reflect again on our different data structures of list, tuples or tuples, and dictionaries. So a list is simply a group of items, comma delimited, and it is bookended by square brackets. A tuple is just like a list, except we bookend it with parentheses, and a tuple, or some people pronounce it tuple, both ways are correct, is immutable. We cannot change the items in a tuple. We can't add to it. We can't subtract items, whereas in a list we can. That's the big difference between these two. And then we have a dictionary, and the dictionary is bookended by curly brackets. And the dictionary consists of pairs. There's a key, a colon, and a value. And those pairs are comma delimited. So here's an example of kind of the code we're going to write here. Is we're going to have a list of states. Could have made this a tuple. Would have worked out very well. In fact, it might have been better to do a tuple, simply because it just processes a little bit faster. Python doesn't worry about the tuple changing. But we're going to do it as a list. And so I'm going to have my square brackets, and then each state as a string, and I use single quotes with commas between those states. And we'll have all 50 states. And then we'll have a dictionary called capitals, in which we'll have each state, colon, and the capital. And again, we're using strings here, so the key and the value are both enclosed in single quotes. Could use double quotes, it doesn't really matter. We're going to generate a number randomly, but let's say it generated 2. I'm going to get the index 2 from states, which in this case would be our third item, which would be Arizona. So state becomes Arizona. And then we're going to print, we're going to have an input statement, but I just did a print statement here of the capital of, placeholder 0 is placeholder 1, and my formatting is the state, and then capitals, and the key that I'm looking for is the variable value that is of state, which in this case would be Arizona. And so the output from that statement in this situation would be the capital of Arizona is Phoenix. So that's what we're going to use in our project. I'm going to jump over into Python. I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to save this as CIS 156. This is project 05B, or assignment 05B, and it is going to be the state capitals quiz. I'll put my name, and it's going to be saved as a Python file. And I'm going to save this into my Python folder. And the first thing I want to do is we want to import random, because we're going to use the random number object. And I like to put all my import statements at the very top. That's pretty traditional amongst programmers. Now we saw previously that we're going to write everything in functions now. So we're going to define our main function. I usually like to do that at the very top. So it's def, the name of our function, parentheses, and a colon. And we're going to create two functions. One is going to be setup game. So we'll call that. And play game. Now the setup game is going to also call a couple other functions, but those are the two that we called from main. I'll create my setup game function. And it's going to give me a little bit of space and also set up the play game function. Neither of these are going to take any parameters. Okay, so in setup game, we're going to create a couple global variables. States, capitals. States is going to be a list. Capitals is going to be a dictionary. Then I want basically an integer variable called correct, integer variable called incorrect, where we're keeping score, and I'm going to create another list called used. And used is what we're going to use to track which states have already been used in our game, so we don't have any repeating occurrences until we've gone through all 50. Now I set these up as global so I can refer to these in other functions such as play game. And I have to require these as global if I in another function if I'm going to do any changes to any of these. But we're going to set correct equal to 0. We'll set incorrect equal to 0. And I'm going to take used as a list and say it equals a false value. It's going to be a Boolean list, but I want 50 falses. And rather than type out all those different falses 50 times, where I'll probably make a counting error, I can just do this shorthand cut where I'm multiplying a value and I'm going to get a list of 50 items, each one being false. And then we're going to say states is going to equal, and here I'm going to call another function of setup states list. And I'm going to do the same thing with capitals. And it's going to be setup capitals dictionary. And I've got an uppercase I there that I'm going to fix. I'm going to print developed by Stephen Hustedde for CIS 156 at South Mountain Community College. We'll do another print statement. This one's going to have a new line character, gives a blank line. The state capitals quiz. I'm going to do an exclamation mark after that, and we'll close that with a quote and a right paren. We'll do another print statement, and we'll say this game will test how well you know your state capitals. And again, I'll do a new line character there. And that's going to be the end of our setup game. Now we created two more functions here for setup state list and setup capitals dictionary. And I'm going to go ahead and add those stubs here, finding our function for setup states list No parameters again, but it is going to return a value. So I'm going to put in return there right away, so I don't forget that to return a value. Then we're also going to create a function for setup capitals dictionary. And that's also going to return a value. So I'm going to code these two and show you how I use Excel in helping me from having to type a whole bunch of stuff and reducing the possibility of errors as I type. So to do this, there's an Excel spreadsheet in our Canvas course site that I've created in the Module 5 unit called State Capitals. And I'm just going to open that up. And what I did is I went out to the internet and I found a list of all of the states and all the capitals, and I put those into an Excel spreadsheet. So these are all listed alphabetically by state. And then also made another second list, just the states duplicated from A to Z, or in this case, A to W. So here's how I like to create code from Excel. And I'm going to start with the states, since that's our first one, and it's like the simpler one. I'm going to come down here, and over in column D, I'm going to write a formula. So in row 57, column D, across from Alabama, and I'm going to say it equals, and I'm going to do a double quote, single quote, double quote, an ampersand, which is the concatenation symbol in Excel, not a plus. I'm going to click on Alabama, do another ampersand, and then another double quote, single quote, comma, double quote. And I'm just going to copy all that. And then I'm going to press the Enter key. And notice what I get is Alabama in single quotes and a comma. So now in the next row, cell D58, I'm going to paste that formula again. But now just after the equal sign, I'm going to click that previous cell, D57, and I'll do an ampersand after that. And then where I have the A57, I'm going to change that to A58, so it's reflecting Alaska over here on the left. And I'm going to press the Enter key. And so now I get Alabama in quotes, comma, Alaska in quotes, comma. Now here's the power of Excel, because I'm going to take this formula, I'm going to grab the fill down box and drag down to Wyoming. And notice what it did is along the way it just simply kept extending the values. So now for Wyoming, I'm just going to select that cell and I'm going to do a Control C to copy it. And I'm going to jump back over to Python. And so in Python, where we have our setup states list, I'm going to return equals. I'm going to type in my square bracket, paste, and just so this is a little more readable, I'm going to separate this onto multiple lines. And at the very end here, I'm going to get rid of that last comma and add my closing square bracket. That saved me having to type all those, and the chance of me making a typographical error probably is pretty good, or maybe leaving a state out is pretty good. It just helps reduce the amount of errors and saves me time. Now I want to do the same thing here for the capitals, where we're setting up the dictionary. So I'm going to go back to Excel, and now I'm going to come up to where I have the state and the capital, but I'm basically going to do the same thing. I'm going to say equals, double quote, single quote, double quote, ampersand, my first state, ampersand, space, double quote, single quote. Here I want a colon, single quote, double quote, ampersand, my capital, ampersand, double quote, single quote, comma, double quote. And again, I'm going to copy that formula because I want to use that basically again. I'm going to press the Enter key here. And so what I get is Alabama in single quotes, a colon, and Montgomery in single quotes, and a comma. So that's my first key value pair. So in the next cell, I'm basically going to paste again, but this time, we're in front of the equals, we're going to put our D4 ampersand, and here I want to change the A4 to an A5 and the B4 to a B5 and press the Enter key, and now I've got two pairs, Alabama Montgomery and Alaska Juneau. And each of the keys and the values are in single quotes with a colon in between and comma separated. And once again, we can just fill down. Oops, I don't want to go too far down. So this built our code for us that we're going to use. I'm just going to take that last cell, I'm going to copy it, and let's go back over to Python. And so for setting the state capitals, we're going to say return equals, I'm going to paste, and again I'm just going to separate these onto multiple lines. And then at the end I want to get rid of that last comma and add in my closing right curly bracket. That one even saved me more time because of the pairs. And again, the chance of me making a typographical error, leaving out a comma, putting in a semicolon rather than a colon, that's all eliminated. So we have our setup game now all completed. Just to test this, so in the play game, I just want to do a quick test to see if this is all getting set up correctly. So we'll create a variable called IDX. I'm going to set it equal to 2. That's going to be our index for our states, which 2 would be the third item. It's going to be Arizona. I'm going to create a variable called state. It's going to equal states element IDX. And then capital is going to equal capitals. And our key here is going to be state. And then we'll do a print the capital of, we'll do placeholder 0 is placeholder 1, period. And then I'm going to format that. In this case, I'll just use state and capital. Okay, so let's run this and see if it all works. And I need an extra parenthesis there. Let's run this again. And I inadvertently put an equals in here. I don't want an equals there either. We're just returning a value. Now, nothing happened. Well, why didn't anything happen? Because we didn't put our call to main. So at the very end here of our project, we want to call main. We're going to run this again. We'll save. And so what I'm getting is the print statements from the setup game. I notice I have a little typo here I need to go back and fix. So I've got a couple typos there. And the capital of Arizona is Phoenix. So we're getting the information from our states list and our capitals dictionary correctly. So I'm going to come back up here. This will test how well you know your state capitals. So as you're testing, you always want to check your spelling. Sometimes what you can do if you wanted is you could actually copy some of this into Word and use the spell checker there. Now we're going to set up our play game. Now as we're playing the game, we're going to want to modify the correct, the incorrect, and the used variables. We don't have any need to modify states or capitals. So I'm going to start the play game just by referencing those three variables as global. So correct, incorrect, and used. We're going to create a local variable called guess. I'm just going to set it equal to nothing, to null string. And that's the guess is going to hold what the user types in for the state capital. And again, if they type in quit, we want to quit. So we're going to do all this inside of a while loop while guess does not equal quit. In fact, I'm going to say while guess dot lower. So in case I type in an upper quit or a capital Q does not equal quit. We had our random object. I'm going to use IDX for index. It's going to equal random. We're going to call the randint function. And I want a value between 0 and the length of states minus 1. So it'll give me a value between 0 and 49. Those are inclusive. And then I want to make sure that we're using a state that hasn't been used before. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that used list, and when we generate an index, we're going to check that value in our used list and see if it's false. If it is, then we can use that. However, if it's true, then we're going to regenerate another IDX variable randomly. So while used element IDX, and that's either true or false. I don't need to set it equal to anything. I'm just going to put a colon here. And what I'm going to do is just copy this statement, and I'm going to reuse it here. So we're simply regenerating another IDX until we hit one that has the used list item being false. Once we find an item in use that is false, I'm going to set it to true, meaning we can't reuse it again. So use element IDX equals true. Now we'll run into a problem here, and that is if we play more than 50 times, after our 50th play, it's gone through all 50 states and they're all marked true in my used list. And so when I'm trying to generate a new IDX that is false, it can't do it, and this becomes an endless loop here. So what I want to have happen is check to see if these are all true, and if they are, I want to set them to all false. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to create a variable called AllTrue equals true. We're going to set the value of AllTrue to true to start with. And then I'm going to do a for loop for I in range 0, 50, and here the last item is exclusive, so go to 0 to 49. And I'm going to say if used element I is equal to false, then I'll set all true equal to false. Once it goes through that loop, I'm simply going to say if all true, and that's either true or false. So if it's still true, meaning all 50 of those items in the used list was true, we want to do something. And we're simply going to reset used equal to false times 50. And I'm just going to put a little comment here that we are resetting used to all false. While we're here, let's add a comment of check to see if all used is true. Let's add another little comment here of regenerate IDX if state is already used. Okay, so that's going to make sure we don't reuse the states. Now we're going to say state equals, and we're going to take our states list and find IDX. and then capital equals capitals, and our key is the value of the state variable. Now we're ready to ask the user to enter their guess. So guess equals input. What is the capital of, and I'm just going to concatenate here the value of state. I'm going to set to all uppercase just to make it stand out. Plus, we'll do a question mark. And I'm going to put just a reminder here of enter quit to end. And then we'll do an if structure. If guess.lower, that's a function, so I need my parentheses, equals quit. Our fork here, we can simply put a break statement, and that will end this method, which will end our game. And then we want an elif, guess.lower is equal to capital.lower. So I'm going to take the case sensitivity out here, and we'll do a print statement. That is correct. And we'll do a placeholder 0 is the capital of placeholder 1. And fix my typo there. And we're going to format. In this case, I want the capital first and then the state. And I'm going to take correct, our variable, and increment it by 1. And then I want an else fork. And the else fork here is going to be print. Sorry. The capital of, and this time we'll use 0, which is going to be our state, is 1. And so we will format, this time, state and capital. And I want to increment the incorrect value by 1. And then finally I want to print the score. So we use another print statement. Your score, you have gotten 0 of 1 correct. And I'm going to do a new line character, just add a little spacing before we get into the next one. And our format here is going to be correct. And then I want the total number, which is going to be correct plus incorrect. And I put that in parentheses. I really didn't need to. I need one more print because I have 3 left. I need 3 right. I'm going to do one more thing here, and that's on the quit. Let's just thank them for playing. Maybe tell them what their final score is. So let's just do a print. Thanks for playing. And I'm going to basically copy this. We'll say you got blank of blank correct. 0 of 1 correct. We're going to pass them the number correct and the total number and a new line character, and it'll break. Okay, so I'm going to save this and let's run it and see if we got everything correct. And we have a little error here. So used, and I've got a parenthesis there that should be a square bracket. So here's our game down here. We're asked for New Mexico. I'll type in Santa Fe. We got that one correct. Vermont, we saw earlier, was Montpelier. That's correct. Nebraska, Lincoln. Idaho is Boise, but if I misspell it, so it should be B-O-I-S-E. I'm going to misspell it as B-I-O-S-E. It actually gave us an error. So let's figure out what the error here is. It expected a curly bracket in the field name. So this is one where it's not correct. So I'm going to look back and look at my code. And what I have here again is a square bracket that should be a curly bracket. I'm going to save and run again. Okay, this one starts out with Nebraska. Type in Lincoln. Arkansas is Little Rock. North Dakota is Bismarck. Now again, I'm going to spell this because it's actually M-A-R-C-K. If I just do a K without the C, we're told, sorry, the capital of North Dakota is Bismarck. And remember, spelling did count, so we've now gotten 2 out of 3. That seemed to have worked. Pennsylvania is Harrisburg. And then Massachusetts is Boston. So now we're at 4 of 5. Missouri is Jefferson City, but let's type in St. Louis and get that one wrong. And so now we're 4 of 6. And if I type a quit to end the game, we get a thanks for playing, you got 4 of 6. Now, the one thing I haven't tested is to make sure we can go more than 50, that it starts to repeat. So I'm just going to do that really quickly by running the module. And I'm not going to bother to enter anything here. I'm just going to simply get them all wrong. And so I'm looking at the numbers here, 0 of 21, 32, then I'm at 48, there's 0 of 49, and I'm on Georgia. I'm just going to go back through the list and see if I see any duplicates. And make sure that one state's not coming up multiple times. Now to really do this correctly, we could take our Excel spreadsheet, maybe print it out, and just check next to each state as they come up, and so we've gone through all 50. But as I look through the list here, I don't see any duplicates. So as I look through the list, I don't see any duplicates. Nebraska, Tennessee, Illinois, Kentucky, Delaware, New Hampshire, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Louisiana, Arizona, Maryland, Alaska, Massachusetts, New York, Virginia, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Washington, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Montana, Alabama, Hawaii, California, Kansas, New Mexico, North Carolina, Maine, Wisconsin, South Dakota, Ohio, Minnesota, Colorado, Utah, Oregon, Idaho, South Carolina, Texas, Missouri, New Jersey, Florida, Vermont, Nevada, Wyoming, Indiana, West Virginia, North Dakota, and Michigan. And so I'm going to press enter again. Now I'm 0 at 50. And so now it should be starting back over. So I'm at New Jersey. Did New Jersey come up before? Yes, it did. So now it's allowing me to duplicate that. And now I'm getting a whole new list of the 50 states in a totally different order. Everything seems to work, and that is our state capitals project.